Upon further review, I have a lot of good things to say about Oregon's game against Washington. So we're going to relive that a little bit more. How worried should we be about the run game?
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, it is that time once again for Locked On Ducks. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you all so much for making this your first listen or your first view of the day. It is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, your number one source to stay up to date with the Ducks, part of the number one sports podcast network out there. Thank you all so much for making that the case. Where could Oregon have been better? Thoughts on the run game and Tosh Lupoi. To Cal? Question mark? I mean, he did pretty well on Saturday. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Washington was one of the most fun regular season games I've watched since Dan Lanning arrived in Eugene. So I figured we'd just go through everything and relive the game once again. If that sounds like fun to you, you're going to have a lot of fun on today's show. So let's start by shouting out Lake Oswego High School football, state champs in 2025. Good work, boys. Secondly, the more I watch the game, the more the uniforms look so unbelievably good. I mean, the callback to the catch with Pat Johnson. Okay, seriously. All the things that I watched, I went back and watched the entire game, and it was a good time. There were a lot of really good things. When I've talked this year about situational football and game planning and what that looks like and how it plays out, Saturday is a great example of Oregon having a good game plan and being prepared for certain moments and executing very well on the field. So, first drive is a great example. Oregon wanted to come out and establish the run. They couldn't. I'll have thoughts on that later. I'm starting with all of the good stuff. The second segment will be not as good of stuff. But Oregon comes out, they try to run the ball on the first couple plays. It doesn't work. They only pick up 3 yards, which was highly unusual for Oregon this season. And one of my keys going into the game was establish the run game early. They wanted to do that. But then they threw a little wrinkle in there. And they have had sequences this year where they have kind of gone with a 3-play script almost to go really fast and run them as fast as they can. But typically they've done it like mid-first quarter, early second quarter. And they did it on the first drive of this game. And they came out, and it was very Mike Leach-esque, R.I.P., forever and always. And they went high tempo, and they just called 4 verts on 3rd and 7. And Dante Moore threw an absolute dime to Jeremiah McLaughlin, who played his best game as a Duck. And yes, that was a catch. It was absolutely a catch. I cannot believe that it wasn't. Now, later in the drive, Dante Moore threw another beautiful ball to Malik Benson that he could have caught, and then he almost threw an interception, but didn't. Washington dropped it, and they got a field goal there. But that first drive, I thought represented a good game plan and also the right sort of mentality. To trust Dante Moore, he played so well in this game. 2 total touchdowns, 286 yards through the air, no turnovers. Could have had a pick there, but didn't. Also didn't get the most help at times. If they'd called that a catch, or Kenyon Sadiq catches a 50-50 ball he usually brings down, or Benson brings that one down, we're talking about Dante Moore having close to 350 yards. And no, he wasn't perfect in this game. He certainly was not, but man, he played really well. And I very much appreciated, and I don't know that you would have seen this as much early in the year as Dante Moore was settling himself into being Oregon's starting quarterback, but that shows a high level of trust between Dan Lanning and Will Stein in their quarterback. To say, hey, you don't have to Corian Moore, Evan Stewart's not coming back, no Gary Bryan either, we're going to trust you go out there and make plays. I love that. Foot on the gas, go make it happen. And Dante, for the most part, really did. So the other thing that I appreciated was Oregon's defensive game plan in this game. So they did a couple things really. They did several things well, first of all. But the 2 biggest things were, again, among my biggest keys to the game, which is part of the reason that I'm coming on here saying, yeah, I thought they did a lot of things right. Damon Williams ran 10 times for 27 yards. He is probably the fastest quarterback Oregon has faced in the last several years. I don't know who's faster. He's really, really tough to bring down. But they were making a concerted effort to not give up chunk plays, which they didn't, and to limit Denzel Boston, who had under 30 yards receiving in this game. He had 2 touchdowns, but they were both pretty short relative to what he's done all season long. And one target of his in the end zone, of course, wound up being an interception. So then you look at Oregon's run defense, and at times, Washington was able to lean on the run game. I thought I was really impressed with Muhammad. Jonah Coleman, of course, wasn't that effective. I don't know if he was 100%, but Oregon just seems to bottle him up really well. But Adam Muhammad ran the ball really well. He didn't actually run the ball as well as the numbers indicated. His longest or second longest run of the game had a hilarious missed hold on it. So did Jonah Coleman's longest run of 9 yards. But overall, that felt like it was the most successful area for Washington. And you look up, and they didn't gash Oregon. They had to work for it. Their running numbers were not that explosive. They were fine. They were good. They ran for 154 yards. But that's not going to kill you. And they had, again, the long run of 22. And Damon Williams had one 18-yard run on a scramble. The ability to limit the explosives, I think, was a huge part of Oregon's approach. I think any defense wants to, but Oregon just did a much better job of it than Washington on Saturday. So, yeah, there were missed flags all over the place. Man, that stood out on the rewatch. Jaden Kennedy on Dylan Thieneman's game-clinching interception. Jaden Kennedy blitzed from the field side, is from the nickel spot, and he clearly got held by the tight end. No, it's not something that's getting called consistently. So that's just the way that it is going forward. But going back to Dante Moore, a couple other thoughts on the defense, and then I want to get back to Dante Moore and 2 things that he did exceptionally well. Oregon's linebackers keep playing better and better as the weeks go by. And they were important in this game because they didn't let a bunch of explosive run plays get out. They did make some plays behind the line of scrimmage because in addition to Oregon's 4 sacks, there were 2 other tackles for loss, and Maury Washington had one of those. But the way that Oregon's linebackers played, I thought stood out as something that continues to get better. All 3 of them, Bryce Betcher, Jerry Mixon, Devin Jackson, those guys all did some really good things in this game, spying Damon Williams, not letting big runs. They did very well in coverage in this game. They blitzed as effectively as I've seen them blitz as a trio all season long. Even on Washington's touchdown before the end of the first half, Jerry Mixon is lighting up Damon Williams, and he makes a throw, and they executed a good pick play, a legal one against man-to-man coverage. So the linebackers keep playing better. Dan Lanning did not handle that sequence very well. However, you also have to go back and credit Dan Lanning for a 4th and 1 that led to Oregon's first touchdown. Didn't like the look, and he called a timeout. That play was not getting the line to gain. And he realized didn't like the look, called a timeout at the last second. They go out, dial up the speed option to the boundary, and they're able to get the first down. Alex Harkey, got away with a little bit of a tug. But as I mentioned, Washington got away with that a lot. So that was a really that really stood out, and I think I forgot about that a little in my reaction show. But if Oregon has to settle for 3 points there instead of having a 2-possession lead, man, the momentum just swings. It feels completely different. So wanted to shout that out. Okay, 2 Dante Moore plays. Just really good stuff. First of all, Oregon to open the third quarter has the ball, goes down the field. They've already converted a long 3rd down to Jamari Johnson, who had a great game. And Dante Moore, after a holding penalty, is staring at 3rd and 17. And he's willing to just take the check down to Jordan Davison, get into field goal range. Atticus Sappington drills it, and it's a 2-possession game. And ice-cold Atticus is a very real thing. And that sounds small and insignificant if you say, oh, he took a check down, so what? to not force the foot after on 2nd and 17, he threw a 50-50 ball to Kenyon Sadiq, who very well could have caught. It was a perfectly thrown ball, and Sadiq's just got to make the play. I'll talk about that more later on the show. To come back and have the wherewithal, this is part of the growth I think that he underwent mentally while he was sitting behind Dylan Gabriel last year and learning under Will Stein. It seems small. It's just not. But to take that check down, make it a better field goal, to let the play develop down the field, everybody clears out. They're trying not to give up the big play. Dump it off to Davison, go get a makeable field goal, 2-possession game. Not the outcome you were looking for, but the best outcome in that scenario. Those were the sorts of moments that when I went back and rewatched, I went, man, Dante Moore was in control of this game. And there's one other play, and then we'll get to the stuff that wasn't quite as good. There's one other play that I was just geeking out over, and you're going to love it. So let me know your thoughts in the YouTube comments below. I'm sure you guys are all still feeling good after that one. But one more just phenomenally good play. Two actually. I've got two. I've got two. And then we'll get to everything else. First, this episode brought to you by Game Time. The World Cup is coming back to North America for the first time since 1994. And with 48 teams for the first time ever, it's going to be massive. But let's be honest, getting tickets is usually the hardest part. That is why the Game Time app is clutch, finally giving fans a real advantage when it comes to snagging seats. With Game Time, you can track price drops in real time, get alerts when great seats open, and buy tickets the moment they hit the app. It puts the power back in your hands and makes going to the World Cup or any sporting, comedy, concert, event, whatever, realistic instead of impossible. I saw a bunch of green at Husky Stadium on TV on Saturday, and I loved it. And I wondered to myself, did any of you guys use Game Time? If you did, let me know how it went. Because I've used Game Time several times myself, and the experience has been great. Take the guesswork out of buying World Cup tickets and every match, concert, or event with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, download the app, make an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Game Time. Okay, before I get to the run game and what went wrong, how concerned should we be and all that, Dante Moore had two other plays that when I went and watched them back, I was almost watching them for the first time. I knew what would happen, of course, but in the first half, and this really excites me and should excite you as Oregon fans as well, because the biggest question with Dante Moore is the biggest coming into this year was the biggest question you ask with a lot of quarterbacks. Hey, I see the physical traits. Does he have it between the ears? Can he play the mental game required? And Dante Moore showed in this game he can. Ryan Walters, Washington's defensive coordinator, former Purdue head coach. If Tosh Lupoi goes to Cal, I'll talk about that later, and Chris Hampton doesn't want to stay with Oregon for some reason, like if he gets offered to be a head coach at a group of 5 school, I'd go try and hire Ryan Walters from Washington. Not just for the memes, but because Ryan Walters is good. And he had a really, really good day. But in the first half, when Dante Moore got sacked on 3rd down, they brought a boundary corner blitz. And Oregon didn't pick it up very well. Dante didn't see it. And had he recognized it immediately, he could have just hot routed it to Malik Benson for an easy pitch and catch on 3rd down. So then, going in the same direction, but on the other side of the field, Dante Moore was thinking about it and was ready for it. And sure enough, Ryan Walters, and Tosh Lupoi does this all the time too, he blitzed the boundary corner, and Dante Moore had probably had a conversation with Will Stein, maybe another offensive coach or two, looked at the film and said, oh, if he does that again, I just got to make, and then he went out and made the adjustment. And he kept the drive alive. Pretty sure that led to points. Loved seeing that. Absolutely loved it. Then, the play of the game, the 64-yard touchdown, is also processing things at a high level. So, there was a play earlier in the game where it wound up leading, I believe, to the 51. Yeah, it led to the 51-yard field goal. And Ryan Walters brought a pretty complicated simulated pressure, and he blitzed some guys and dropped him out as, not going to try and paint the entire picture. I know where everybody was in my head on the field. But anyway, when you watch it, it's hard for Dante Moore in that first play to see where the open guy actually is. And it was on the dig route in between the dropping defenders from the line of scrimmage and the defensive backs who were trying to not let anybody get over their heads. But Dante couldn't see it. He brought it to Kenyon Sadiq underneath, and Sappington drilled a 51-yard field goal. So then on the play of the game, the 64-yard touchdown, it is 3rd down and 9. It's a one-possession game again. Washington's got the momentum. The crowd is alive. Will Stein does something very smart. He flares out Kenyon Sadiq in motion because on the previous play that I just described that led to a 3rd down stop and a field goal try, and had this been a 3rd down stop, it would have been a punt for Oregon's offense. The safety starts down near the line of scrimmage, and it's cover 3, and he actually is responsible for the deep third, so he has to bail really early in the play. So Will Stein motions out Kenyon Sadiq as if it's going to lead right into the snap, and then the safety drops. Now, once that safety dropped, Dante Moore read the defense, and saw the same sort of look and thought, I bet he's going to come back to the same coverage, which he did. And then Dante Moore gets a great block from Alex Harkey, shuffles to the right, knows the dig is coming available, got through his progressions, and made an on-time throw. That was some high-level quarterback play, and I'm here for it. And the dummy snap count to make the defense tip their hand on what they were doing, I'm all about the chess match stuff. I really am. And the chess match in this game, going back to what I mentioned earlier, coaching, game planning, in-game adjustments. Oregon fans have understandably, in some big games over the last couple of years, had their issues with what the Oregon staff has done or hasn't done in those moments. On Saturday, you have to be incredibly thrilled. The game plan, the results, the adjustments, the execution, it was all there across the board. And no, it wasn't perfect, because Will Stein would probably be the first to tell you, we've got to do a better job of scoring touchdowns once we get inside the 30 or inside the 20. And of course they do. That's something to work on going forward. But I appreciated that Dan Lanning, compared to the last time Oregon went to Seattle, was willing to take points on the road, especially early in the game. I agreed with every single kick it or go for it call that Oregon made in that game. Every single one. First drive, you get stopped, take points. We're too many yards to gain anyway. Before their first touchdown, 6-0 doesn't do a lot for you compared to being up 3-0. Something, sure, but how often is a team missing an extra point? So I every single time that they went for it, I said, yep, I'm good with this. Yep, I'm good. Whereas before, early in Dan Lanning's career, it was kind of, I don't know. I don't know if I go for that. Like in 2022 against Washington with Bo Nix off the field and hurt, going for it on your own side of the field, no. Even though your defense wasn't playing that well, that's too aggressive. Got to figure out a way to come up with a stop. So those were the other plays that for Dante Moore in this game made me just really appreciate the way that he prepared, the way that he adjusted. We saw a little fiery passion come out to the camera after he ran for a touchdown, which I'm also here for. But all of those little things can be the difference. And Oregon did a great job with those on Saturday. Okay, now I'll get to the not as good. I promise I'll get there, and some thoughts on Tosh Lupoi. First, this episode brought to you by Omaha Steaks. The holidays always feel a little easier when you already know the perfect gift, and Omaha Steaks makes it almost too simple. Whether you're treating yourself this season or sending something memorable to family and friends, Omaha Steaks delivers handcrafted perfection right to their door. And this week is the best time to jump in because their cyber sale is here and the deals are huge. I'll tell you about that in a moment. First, let me tell you about the quality of product they're giving you. The quality is exactly what you hope for. Incredibly tender steaks, rich flavor, got to have great marbling in there, and meals that make hosting or weeknight cooking easier. I'm all about meal prep myself. because I'm really busy this time of year. I don't always have time to cook dinner every single night. Omaha Steaks is here to help. Save big on unforgettable gifts with Omaha Steaks. Visit omahasteaks.com for 50% off site-wide and an extra 20% off select favorites during their cyber sale. And for an additional $35 off, use the promo code COLLEGE at checkout. That's omahasteaks.com, promo code COLLEGE. Terms apply. See site for details. Check them out at omahasteaks.com. All right, number one thing that Oregon didn't do well in this game that was out of the ordinary, they could not run the football consistently. Now, they still got over 100 yards on the ground, but it was well below their season average. And with the way they've run it in the last several weeks, it was just strange to see. And fundamentally, I think there were two big factors at play. Number one, Washington was making it a priority to not let Oregon run the ball. Their safeties played very well. They got downhill. They made a lot of tackles. They've got some good players on the back end of that defense, and they played really, really well. That was the first thing, is it was a part of their game plan. Hey, we can't let Oregon lean on the run game. We have to force them to throw it. The good news is that Oregon has enough weapons, and Dante Moore, as I talked about in the rest of today's show, played very well and is able to go out and make those sorts of plays. So that was the first thing. Second thing, the offensive line did not block Washington's linebackers well. Zach Durfee is a good football player. I don't think there are a lot of guys on Washington's defense that would start for Oregon. Zach Durfee is one of them. He's kind of a he can play at both levels in the front seven, but he's a good player. Oregon did not block him very well. And Oregon really struggled climbing to the second level and making those blocks that spring the running backs to get them one-on-one. And the few times that they did, Washington safeties, for the most part, just tackled really well. There were a couple missed tackles created by the running backs, but not as many as usual. De'Aaron Hill did a good job with it. Noah Whittington was okay. And Davison didn't have that many places to go. But Washington's front seven has gotten better. Did not think Oregon's offensive line blocked incredibly well. But Davey Uli had a rough day in the run game. Again, as a pass protector, he's really good. But boy, he did not have his best day. I don't think Emmanuel Prenon had his best day. The other thing is Poncho is not 100%. Isaiah World and Alex Harkey, about what I expected. About what we've come to expect. Like, they're just good. They're kind of the same each week. But the interior of Oregon's offensive line has been better in the tackles consistently. They just did not have a good game. And I really don't think watching Poncho, the number of times that he got pushed around a bit in the run game, again, was totally fine in pass protection. I don't think he was 100%. Gave it a go, was able to play, but him getting back to 100%, I think will make a difference for Oregon in the run game. Because not only was he not pushing guys around the way I've seen him do in other games this year, he was also getting pushed around more than I'm accustomed to watching. With Prenon, I don't know. They keep moving Davey Uli and Emmanuel Prenon from left guard to right guard. I think Uli plays better at left, and Prenon can play either one. And Uli in run blocking struggled in this game. So I don't think my concern level is too high, because I wonder if other teams, after watching Oregon throw the ball like that, are going to have the same level of emphasis. But certainly Oregon, as they go into a playoff matchup, if they're going to make a run, will face a front that's at least as good, if not better, than Washington's. So that's something to keep an eye on. I think my concern level there is pretty similar to what it was for the secondary after last week. My concern level last week was a 3. And the leading receiver in this game for Washington had 2 catches for 27 yards. And they were at home, weather was good, and they've had an explosive offense this year. So that wasn't quite. But I'd put my concern there at a 5, pending Poncho's health. I think that was pretty important. So other things where Oregon could have improved, the end of the first half just wasn't managed very well defensively. I still do not, I will not ever understand why Dan Lanning declined the 10-second runoff. If you could have made Washington use a timeout, then maybe if they still have the time. They don't risk running a play to go. Maybe they still wind up scoring. I think he was thinking about trying to get the ball back. And I think that was trying to do too much, and the goal should have been, all right, just keep Washington to 3. Didn't think that was that was handled properly, but again, did most of the things right. There were a number of moments. The similarity between this game and the USC game, big picture, I think the biggest similarity is that Oregon was closer to winning the game by 30 than they were to losing. Brandon Finney dropped a pick on that drive that Washington scored on right before the half. And if he doesn't do that, this game is not as close. And Washington goes in the half with a goose egg on the board. And they've got no momentum and no juice. And they might have only scored 7 points in the entire game. Now, they scored on different variations of the same concept, which is a legal pick play against man coverage. And Oregon has to find a way to be less vulnerable to those. Either get better at defending them or just run a lot more zone coverage. And look, every defense has got its drawbacks and whatnot, but the big play to Roebuck that set up the touchdown where he just barely beat Finney to the inside, heck of a throw by Damon Williams. The touchdown on the pick play to Denzel Boston, the 4th and 8 touchdown to Denzel Boston, they were all those rub routes. So perhaps when Oregon gets down closer to the end zone, they need to play more zone and they can man up a bit more when they're between the 20s. Just my initial reaction there. But Washington was doing that a lot and Oregon was not making an adjustment. And then with the game basically on the line on 4th and 8, they again go man-to-man and they're not getting set in time and they're thrown off a bit by the motion. And then Theron Johnson's one-on-one with Denzel Boston. They run a good pick play and which was perfectly legal, and then he runs wide open. So that's something to watch going forward. Here's another one offensively. Dante Moore and Kenyon Sadiq, the last 2 weeks have worked together to make Sadiq the leading receiver. My concern level of this connection is a 1. It was right there. They were just a little off. Nothing's ever going to be 100%. I almost want to think about this in terms of the law of averages. Like if Kenyon Sadiq and Dante Moore, try to link up for passes downfield 100 times and they're going to convert, 80% or whatever it is. I felt like 15 of that 20% was just all condensed into this game. Dante Moore was a little late on a crosser. Sadiq had his guy absolutely cooked on the corner route, and Dante Moore's got to throw a better ball so that he doesn't have to dive for it. The fade route on 2nd and 17 went right off Kenyon Sadiq's hands. It was a perfectly thrown ball. It was right there, and then I don't think that's going to be a problem whatsoever. That Dante Moore still finished with 286 yards and a touchdown in this game, and then, of course, ran for 1. But that connection was just flat out off. Kenyon Sadiq had 4 catches for 11 yards. 4 catches for 11 yards? And still Oregon was able to have success. I'm not worried about it one bit. My concern level there is a 1. So those moments, in addition to a play that led to a punt, and I don't know what happened. De'Aaron Hill lined up in the slot. He ran a crossing route, was wide open on the drag. Dante Moore wasn't pressured and just threw it behind him. He probably thought De'Aaron Hill, who's of course a running back by nature, he probably thought he was going to stop. And generally on a mesh concept like that, you're taught at a certain point running across the field to stop, and he just kept going and not that worried about it. But that was, again, a moment that could have led to points, and Oregon could have opened the game up a little, and then they didn't. They wound up having to punt the ball away. So that last note that I've got here, and this is more about just crediting Damon Williams, who Oregon made look like a bad player on Saturday. He's not, but Oregon's defense played that well. He's hard to tackle. Bryce Betcher and Mateo Uiagalelei had great looks at sacks on him, and it wound up being a significant difference in yardage. On Mateo's, Dylan Thieneman tracked him down and wound up getting credit for the sack because he chased him in coverage, or in quarterback spy situation rather. But man, Mateo all year, it feels like, has just been getting right next to the quarter, and he just cannot finish the sack. If he gets better at that, it'll boost his NFL draft profile, first of all, but second of all, it'd be helpful for Oregon's defense. But they had looks at bringing him down, and he's small. He's got that Michael James low center of gravity, and they had looks. And in this game, didn't wind up costing you. But in a playoff game, against a better team, that could be the difference. So just something to keep an eye on with that. And again, DeMond is among the most elusive quarterbacks, literally in all of college football. But that's something to watch. Okay, couple mailbag questions to end today's show. SSA, JKS leaves Cal and sits behind a returning Dante Moore in 2025. Consider Moore's return. NIL need to make it happen. Desire to develop quarterbacks ahead of him. Other schools and coaches make a bum's rush for JKS, his mental maturity, etc. So the Cal job still has not been filled. Watch for Tosh Lupoi. I'll probably have more thoughts on that tomorrow. But I got some intel that he is still very much a serious candidate there, and that could take place. Not official. Not official as I'm recording this show. But I won't be surprised at all if that comes to fruition. On JKS leaving Cal and sitting at Oregon in 2026 behind Dante Moore, I'm at a 1. The only way, and I don't think this is likely either, the only way JKS leaves Cal comes to Oregon is if Dante Moore goes to the NFL draft. Only way I think that happens is if Oregon wins a national championship. I'd be here for that trade-off, by the way. But when you've started at a Power 4 school, JKS just went 31 of 40 against a top 25 team for 330s and 4 touchdowns in a game-winning drive. That guy should either be back at Cal, where he enjoys being, or he should be at a bigger program that can pay him a lot of money and have him play in some bigger games. Those are the only spots. And no, he should not. He doesn't need to come to Oregon and develop for a year. Dante Moore did. Very mature thing to do. JKS does not. EJ says SSA, which is, of course, Spencer's scale of agreement. The Ducks are in a better position this season compared to last year to win their first national championship. No national expectations. None. No undefeated season adding pressure. Correct. They get the benefit of the ridiculous playoff schedule. This coaching staff has already experienced the playoffs and will learn from last year. Okay, so the fundamental SSA is the Ducks are in a better position compared to last year to win their first national championship. Their first game won't be against Ohio State. So that's got to be somewhat of a better position. No national expectations. I don't think that's a part of it, because that cloud of not having won a national championship yet is the only thing hanging over the program. No undefeated season adding pressure. Sure. If they get a home playoff game, they won't have a ridiculously long layoff as they did last season, but they will still have time since they're missing the Big Ten title game to get healthy. So they fixed the seeding, so being a lower seed is not potentially advantageous as it was last year, but a better position than last year. A better position than last year. I'm giving that a 7.5 because I think this could work out great. No Big Ten championship game. Rest up and get everybody healthy. That includes Poncho, the rest of the offensive line, the receiving core. Get them to 100%, but don't make them sit for almost a month, basically. First game is likely to be December 19th or 20th. Should be at Autzen Stadium. Yeah, I'll give that a 7.5, that they're in a better spot schedule-wise than last year. I agree. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. Until then, hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day, and go Ducks.